would happen if we all chose to rise together? What would happen if we all chose to stand together? Instead of plotting and planning to undermine each other, instead of pointing the finger at our fellow brother and telling them that they the reason for the problem, or demanding that they're the ones to solve them, aren't we all walking on this sacred garden, the planet Earth that be steadily revolving around the sun? See, all of us illuminated. Some have slipped up and others have deviated from the higher purpose, the deeper plan, fallen victim, temptations of a man. Now I understand no one can tell us who to be. Gotta rise above the selfishness and all that greed. Gotta open up our hearts so we can finally see. And if we do this as a people, then we all are free. Imagine for a moment that you walked into one of your friends or a family member's house and you went over to the kitchen table and they had a huge puzzle put together, maybe a 10,000 piece puzzle. And it was almost complete, but there was a few pieces missing. And you look to the side of the table and there's a handful of pieces left. And you pick them up and you try to squeeze them into place, but these puzzle pieces that you picked up are too small, some of them are too big, the edges are too straight, and they don't seem to fit in this picture, this puzzle that they are looking to assemble. This is when your friend or family member approaches and says, I don't even know where those puzzle pieces came from. I mean, you could just throw them away. And he grabs one and throws it to the other side of the room. Well, growing up, I felt like I was that puzzle piece that wasn't needed to complete the image that the society and the community around me was seeking to create. I landed in this unique part of our country called Salt Lake City, Utah. Don't know if you've been there. If you haven't, it has some beautiful mountains. You see, my mother was adopted from Scotland. My father is African American. And growing up, I never felt quite white enough for my community. I never felt quite black enough. And I found myself in this very interesting middle ground where I questioned if my unique piece of life was even of value to the environment that I was in. Now, I find this interesting because in elementary school, growing up in Salt Lake, they teach you a lot about this guy, Brigham Young, and the Mormon pioneers who supposedly founded this land, but as you and I probably both are well aware, they didn't really find it. There were already people living there, but I think that's another TED Talk. I'll save that for next time. But it's interesting growing up as a young boy and being taught that when they entered into this valley of Salt Lake City, this guy, Brigham Young, looked across the valley and said, "This is the place." And I looked deep within myself, and I never felt like it was the place for me. You see, as my sisters and I went through our youth and into adolescence, our hero, our guiding light, my mother, struggled with drugs and addiction, abuse and depression. My father, he wasn't around. I didn't know him until I was about 16 years old, which meant my sisters and I spent a lot of time with our grandparents. And it didn't take long to look out into the community and see that things really didn't match up. Everybody in that environment had both a mother and a father at home, and we were raised with our grandparents. On top of that, my grandparents were supporting my sisters, myself, them, as well as my mom and my aunt with a very small Social Security check, and our clothes didn't match, and words of hate and just expressions that made me feel less than flowed forth from the mouth of others. And then on top of that, my sister and I were two of the only kids who had a slight different tint of skin, and my skin doesn't look too tinted up here, but words of discrimination, prejudice from kids and even adults, placing us in these limited boxes, telling us who we would become and that our life really wouldn't amount to much because of the environment that we were growing up in. And I remember when I was 11 years old, I walked into my Sunday school class. I was always one of the first ones in there because my grandmother was the librarian, and I looked up at the chalkboard. And on the chalkboard at 11 years old, I read the words, "No niggers allowed." Now, mind you, My sister and I were two of the only kids who had any color. And as a young boy, I reached out and internalized these words and actually believed that's who I was, that I didn't have value, that I wasn't respected and honored as the glorious light that I feel that I am. This was the first time my grandmother, who grew up in a small town in Utah, ever experienced discrimination. She has always been a part of the majority. And when that happened, I could see in her eyes, looking at me, thinking, how could somebody say this to a young boy who has so much power, so much potential, so much possibility within him? She looked at me that day and said, Jeffon, somebody's opinion of you does not have to become your reality. Now, you may not have ever experienced anything that I just said, but I'm sure that there may have been at least one time in your experience where you felt like your unique piece of life was not of value to maybe your school or your workplace or your home. But I find it interesting because all of us in here, in fact, everybody who we come across, is revealing just a small portion of who they truly are. Each morning we wake up, we put on these masks, not literally, but we make sure our exterior is dressed in a certain way, that we are received in a well manner, but we are only showing a small bit of who we truly are. So I encourage you, as you go throughout your day, be willing to look beneath the mask of the person who you are communicating with and connect to the eternal essence, the energy, the light that is dwelling within not just you, but within everybody. There's a beautiful quote by Plato who says, "Be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a hard battle." In fact, I'm sure that with some of us in this room, some of the people who we'll see today, they're going through some difficult situations. So I encourage you to be the one to look deeper and connect with who they truly are. Be willing to see them in their highest and best light. Now, I don't mean like running over to somebody like, "Excuse me, sir, I know you're suffering, but I see you." Or running over to a lady, "Excuse me, ma'am, you're absolutely gorgeous, but you're struggling, and I just want to let you know I'm here for you. So just let me know how I can help." Instead, simply just say a kind word to somebody. Be willing to look at their eyes when you're communicating with them. Be willing to shoot a smile from across the room at somebody who may be going through a difficult situation. Be willing to pay somebody a compliment, for you never know where they may be on their journey. And growing up, I always asked, why did people always classify me by the way my external was put together? Why didn't they ever look a little bit deeper and connect with who I truly was? And it's interesting because these people who weren't willing to look deeper were those same people who would sow thoughts of negativity, toxic words, toxic expressions into my life. And as a young boy, and even right now, we can reach out and grab those negative words and negative thoughts and internalize them, and those negative seeds are sown within our garden of life, our inner sanctuary, and given enough time and attention, they begin to blossom and unfold and ultimately become a toxic experience. But on the flip side, there were a few people who I remember who sowed seeds of love, of positivity, possibility into my experience. Such as my 4th grade teacher, Miss Jensen, who took time out of her day to pull my grandmother and mom to the side and said, "I recognize that there's some holes in Jeffon's life. Can I please pay for him to play soccer and baseball and basketball?" Or my sophomore English teacher, Mr. Thompson, who took time out of his day to open my mind to the writings of Langston Hughes and other inspirational authors telling me, "Jeffon, keep writing, keep moving toward your dreams," even when everything around me was seeming to crumble apart. He told me, "Don't give up. If nobody believes in you, I believe in you." Or even Miss Miss Harrison, my friend's parents, mom, not parents, mom, who allowed me to go out with them when they went to dinner and on these trips and opened my mind to prosperity and abundance and included me. And I recognized, given the proper conditions, certain seeds begin to blossom in our experience. So I ask you, what seeds have you been watering in your inner world? And more importantly, what seeds have you been depositing within the inner worlds of other individuals? Are they seeds of love? Or are they toxic seeds that cause somebody to doubt who they truly are? You see, I find that we all go through dark experiences, difficult situations in our life. In fact, I'm sure that all of us in here might be going through something or know somebody who is going through a dark experience. People questioning if their unique piece of life is even needed in this world that we are a part of. But when you're going through these dark times, I encourage you to look out into nature and embrace the wisdom that surrounds us, recognizing that a seed must first be sown in the darkness of the soil before it can birth out into the light. Each and every one of us in this room spent our first 7 to 9 months on this earth in the darkness of our mother's womb before we were birthed out into this expression. In this infinite universe that we are all a part of, endless space and darkness that is necessary for planets and solar systems and galaxies to unfold out from within itself and in our individual lives, it is those dark times, those difficult experiences that cause us to look deeper and recognize who we truly are, blossoming and unfolding into our highest and best. These dark situations in my life help me recognize the power of love, the power of compassion. You see, it was love that pulled my mother through addiction into sobriety. It is love that rekindled my dad and my relationship and helped us see each other in the highest light, not pointing fingers or blame at one another for what may or may not have happened in the past. It is love that broke the box of limitation, allowing my sisters and myself to soar into our highest and best. And it is love that can help those who are going through the extremes, the children who may be suffering, and help raise people into their highest and best. You see, while I believe that my peace wasn't needed in this world that I'm a part of, I've learned that my unique piece of life is of value, and so is yours. And as we come together for peace, for compassion, for love, generosity, and gratitude, helping each other recognize the valuable piece that we have here and now, the importance that our life plays. I mean, just imagine for a moment, we are all standing on top of the shoulders of giants, generations, 10,000 generations that have been in existence to bring us into this present moment of now. To say that your piece is not of value is not only a disgrace to who you are, but to the Creator that is flowing through all things. And as we come together for peace and love, compassion, we create a masterpiece. We create a world that works for everybody. And this is the power of compassion. First and foremost, having compassion and love for ourselves, so much so that it flows out from within us and uplifts others. After all the great peace walkers and enlightened individuals who have walked this planet are those individuals who have embraced self-compassion so much that it flowed out from within them and uplifted others. So when I think about living in the extreme, it's not about climbing to the tops of mountains, diving deep beneath the sea, or even traveling across the world. To me, living the extreme is about recognizing that our life isn't necessarily about ourselves, but it is about living our life in such a way that we are uplifting and empowering others. This is the power of compassion. Thank you.